It's giving me the welcome to the live chat thing. Looney's stealing my animal friends. We're here with our animal friends and Looney's trying to eat them. She already stole one of the cats. Now she's trying to steal the other ones. Yay, okay, we got the chat. So we're here with me and my animal friends. We've got Looney the husky here. And our little animal friends. I think she stole the husky that looks like her, the little husky, because I don't know where that one is. But we have our little German Shepherd. We've got Heather the bunny. We've got Mr. Fox. And we've got the Aura Stuffy. And Mr. Goat. Looney. Look at that silly girl. Are you going to sit and read with us? You can't steal all my stuffies, Looney. I might have to put these back up. Looney, you cannot steal all my stuffies. So, hi, Hyperelectric. So tonight we are going to be reading once more from my favorite book, The Phantom Tollbooth. It's my favorite book from childhood. Silly Looney. We have my silly dog trying to join in here. Hi, Looney. Yes, you can sit with us. Yeah, you can sit with us. You sit, lay down. So we left off on chapter 9. How's your lip? Oh, it's not my lip, it's my tongue. Yeah, it's actually a lot better. It was, you see, yeah, a ball full one last night. Yeah, I had a cold sore right on the tip of my tongue. It was huge yesterday, but it's gone down some, so it's a bit better. And my leg is better too. I went and stopped and got the rest of my workout bands from my brother's house so that I can work out without hurting myself, because those bands were definitely too tight. But I do need to continue my physical therapy, so I went and I got the rest of my workout bands tonight. Sorry, I got an itch on my nose. I just had to, yeah, cold sore. I get them on my tongue more than, I don't get them on my lips as often. I get them on my tongue and like my gums inside. But definitely, so I don't know if I'm coming down with something or what. My sinuses were all messy again the other day, so welcome in, Alex. Oh, my eyes are dry. All right, but let's get into reading because it's late and I want to get a few chapters done. So, Miss Girl. So yeah, today we are going to start at chapter 9. If you remember where we left off, they were just leaving Dictionopolis. The witch, W-H-I-C-H. Looney, get down. You're going to go back in your crate? I just let you out. She just got a timeout for doing that, for going on the counter. I just let her out. Now she's trying to do it again. Come here. Get down. Here, you know what? Let's give Looney, before we start reading, we'll give Looney something to occupy herself so that we can read in peace. Forever, we can R.I.P. Read in peace. Looney, we're going to make you go R.I.P. Not rest in peace, read in peace. Yeah, we let her out of her timeout, but she's already acting up. She's already acting up again. Maybe I shouldn't have let you out, Looney. Mama shouldn't have let you out. Mommy shouldn't have let you out. You were being naughty again. All right, we'll get her some Kong so that she has something to do. I like to read at the park. Oh, that's very nice. I used to read when I was a kid. I would read everywhere, basically. I was a bookworm, what they call a bookworm, where someone just has a book on them all the time. I always had a book on me. At recess, I didn't play with the other kids. I would go and sit, which is kind of like what reminded me of this. I would go and sit out at the recess, like the park that they have at school. I would go sit under a tree on the little bench, and I would just read my book while all the other kids played. Get down. Get down. You gotta put these in your Kong. These gotta go in your Kong, silly. Alright, got her fresh pet. Ones are kind of frozen, so they're hard to get in there. There you go, Luna. You can have this. This will give her something to do while we read, because she just gets bored. She goes looking for fun, because she gets bored while Mama's reading and streaming. Little girl gets bored. I usually give her these almost. She gets one of these like almost every night. Spoiled. Spoiled. All right, Minnie, there's plenty in there now. It's frozen, though. It's kind of cold. Here you go. Put this in here. All right. Here you go, Looney. You gonna roll? No, that's up. You gotta go down and roll. There you go, roll. There you go. Go take it. Spoiled. Spoiled girl. Thank you, animal lover. But yeah, I like to read at the park too when I was younger. All right, hold on, let me just wipe my camera there. Make sure. Okay. Piece of dog hair on my camera. All right, there we go. That's good. All right, so yeah, where we left off, they were they had just kind of talked to the king, Digitopolis, or Dictionopolis, sorry, Dictionopolis. They had just talked to the king, and he told them about, well, him and the witch, the W-H-I-C-H, had told them about his daughters, Rhyme and Reason, who are the princesses, and so now he's sending them basically on a mission to go get the princesses and bring them back to restore order, because everything in Dictionopolis and their kingdom is going kind of crazy because there's no one there to restore Rhyme and Reason. The princesses Rhyme and Reason kept everyone copacetic and made sure nobody had arguments. They would settle all the arguments in the kingdom, and now without them, it's not good. So now Milo and Talk and the Humbug are leaving to go. I don't think the spelling bee comes. I think just the Humbug and Milo and Talk. They're all going away from the kingdom now to go try to rescue the princesses. So chapter 9 is where we left off. It's called It's All in How You Look at Things. So here we go. Soon all traces of Dictionopolis had vanished in the distance, and all those strange and unknown lands that lay between the kingdom of words and the kingdom of numbers stretched before them. It was late afternoon, and the dark orange sun floated heavily over the distant mountains. A friendly, cool breeze slapped playfully at the car, and the long shadows stretched out lazily from the trees and bushes. "Ah, the open road!" exclaimed the Humbug, breathing deeply, for he now seemed happily resigned to the trip. The spirit of adventure, the lure of the unknown, the thrill of a gallant quest. How very grand indeed. Then, pleased with himself, he folded his arms, sat back, and left it at that. In a few more minutes, they had left the open countryside and driven into a dense forest. "This is the scenic route, straight ahead to Point of View." That's a sign. All the signs are in like bold. Love you, animal lover. Thank you. And you too, butterfly. "So this is the scenic route, straight ahead to Point of View," announced a rather large road sign, but contrary to its statement, all that could be seen were more trees. As the car rushed along, the trees grew thicker and taller and leafier until just as they'd hidden the sky completely, the forest abruptly ended and the road bent itself around a broad promontory. Stretching below, to the left, the right, and straight ahead, as far as anyone could see, lay the rich green landscape through which they had been traveling. Remarkable view, announced the humbug, bouncing from the car as if he were responsible for the whole thing. Isn't it beautiful? Gasped Milo. Oh, I don't know, answered a strange voice. It's all in the way you look at things. I beg your pardon, said Milo, for he didn't see who had spoken. I said, it's all in the way you look at things, repeated the voice. Milo turned around and found himself staring at two very neatly polished brown shoes. For standing directly in front of him, if you can use the word standing for anyone suspended in midair, was another boy just about his age whose feet were easily 3 feet off the ground. So he's got a floating little boy. My Life and Journey says, yay, I caught your live reading. Yep. We are reading. We just started the next chapter, so you're like a page into us starting. You haven't missed too much. Let me just roll my nose. I don't know, whenever I start to talk, my nose gets stuffy. Hi, Connie. Alright, so yeah, there's a little boy who's suspended off the ground. So Milo turned around and he's face to face with his shoes. Sorry, my eyes, wicked dry eye again. It's been bad at night. For instance, continued the boy, if you happen to like deserts, you might not think this was beautiful at all. That's true, said the humbug, who didn't like to contradict anyone whose feet were that far off the ground. For instance, said the boy again, if Christmas trees were people, and people were Christmas trees, we'd all be chopped down, put up in the living room, and covered with tinsel, while the trees opened our presents. What does that have to do with it? Asked Milo. Nothing at all, he answered, but it's an interesting possibility, don't you think? Hi, Chase, sweet, how are you? How do you manage to stand up there? Asked Milo, for this was the subject which most interested him. I was about to ask you a similar question, answered the boy, for you must be much older than you look to be standing on the ground. What do you mean? Milo asked. Well, said the boy, in my family, everyone is born in the air with his head at exactly the height it's going to be when he's an adult. And then we all grow toward the ground. When we're finally grown up, or as you can see, grown down, our feet finally touch. Of course, there are a few of us whose feet never reach the ground, no matter how old we get. But I suppose it's the same in every family. He hopped a few steps in the air, skipped back to where he had started, and then began again. You certainly must be very old to have reached the ground already. Oh, no, said Milo seriously. In my family, we all start on the ground and grow up, and we never know how far until we actually get there. What a silly system, the boy laughed. Then your head keeps changing its height, and you always see things in a different way. Why, when you're 15, things won't look at all the way they did when you were 10, and at 20, everything will change again. I suppose so, replied Milo, for he had never really thought about the matter. Christmas tree, yeah. If people were Christmas trees and Christmas trees were people, then we'd get chopped down and the Christmas trees would open our presents. It's silly. I love this book. It's just so silly. We always see things. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Let me start again because I suppose so, replied Milo, for he had never really thought about the matter. We always see things from the same angle, the boy continued. It's much less trouble that way. Besides, it makes more sense to grow down and not up. When you're very young, you can never hurt yourself falling down if you're in midair. And you certainly can't get into trouble for scuffing up your shoes or marking the floor if there's nothing to scuff them on, and the floor is 3 feet away. That's very true, thought Talk, who wondered how the dogs in the family liked the arrangement. But there are many other ways to look at things, remarked the boy. For instance, you had orange juice, boiled eggs, toast and jam, and milk for breakfast, he said, turning to Milo, and you are always worried about people wasting time, he said to Talk. And you are almost never right about anything, he said, pointing at the humbug. And when you are, it's usually an accident. A gross exaggeration, protested the furious bug, who didn't realize that so much was visible to the naked eye. Amazing, gasped Talk. How do you know all that? Asked Milo. Simple, he said proudly. I'm Alec Bings. I see through things. I can see whatever is inside, behind, around, covered by, or subsequent to anything else. In fact, the only thing I can't see is whatever happens to be right in front of my nose. Isn't that a little inconvenient? Asked Milo, whose neck was becoming quite stiff from looking up. It is a little, replied Alec, but it is quite important to know what lies behind things, and the family helps me take care of the rest. My father sees to things, my mother looks after things, my brother sees beyond things, my uncle sees the other side of every question, and my little sister Alice sees under things. How can she see under things if she's all the way up there? Growled the humbug. Well, added Alec, turning a neat cartwheel, whatever she can't see under, she overlooks. Would it be possible for me to see something from up there? Asked Milo politely. You could, said Alec, but only if you try very hard to look at things as an adult does. Looney, what are you doing over there? Hold on. What you doing over there, Bubba? Be good. Hugs. Let's see. Okay. Okay, you could, said Alec, but only if you try very hard to look at things as an adult does. Milo tried as hard as he could, and as he did, his feet floated slowly off the ground until he was standing in the air next to Alec Bings. He looked around very quickly, and an instant later crashed back down to earth again. Interesting, wasn't it? Asked Alec. Yes, it was, agreed Milo, rubbing his head and dusting himself off. But I think I'll continue to see things as a child. It's not so far to fall. A wise decision, at least for the time being, said Alec. Everyone should have his own point of view. Isn't this everyone's point of view? Asked Talk, looking around curiously. Of course not, replied Alec, sitting himself down on nothing. It's only mine, and you certainly can't always look at things from someone else's point of view. For instance, from here that looks like a bucket of water, he said, pointing to a bucket of water. But from an ant's point of view, it's a vast ocean. From an elephant's, it's just a cool drink. And to a fish, of course, it's home. So you see, the way you look at things depends a great deal on where you look at them from. Now come along, and I'll show you the rest of the forest. He ran quickly through the air, stopping occasionally to beckon Milo, Talk, and the humbug along, and they followed as well as anyone who had to stay on the ground could. Does everyone here grow the way you do? Puffed Milo when he had caught up. Almost everyone, replied Alec, and then he stopped a moment and thought. Now and then, though, someone does begin to grow differently. Instead of down, his feet grow up towards the sky. But we do our best to discourage awkward things like that. What happens to them? Insisted Milo. Oddly enough, they often grow 10 times the size of everyone else, said Alec thoughtfully. And I've heard that they walk among the stars. And with that, he skipped off once again towards the waiting woods. That's interesting. Chapter 10, A Colorful Symphony. Let me just make sure the dog's not doing anything naughty. I don't know what she's doing over there. What are you doing? I hear plastic. Are you eating the plastic? What is that? Oh, yes. Don't eat the plastic, silly. Don't eat the plastic. Don't eat the plastic. Don't eat that. Go on. We don't want you to eat plastic. Trying to eat the wrapper. I put that in the trash, silly. Put the trash in the garage. We should be digging in the trash. Do not take stuff out of the trash. Naughty girl. Naughty girl, naughty girl. Naughty, naughty. Go get your Kong, silly. Alright, silly girl. Alright, we're back. Just didn't want the dog eating stuff. Alright, chapter 10, A Colorful Symphony. I like this chapter. I think, if I remember it. It's like they make music. As they ran, Tall trees closed in around them and arced gracefully towards the sky. The late afternoon sunlight leaped lightly from leaf to leaf, slid along branches and down trunks, and dropped finally to the ground in warm, luminous patches. A soft glow filled the air with the kind of light that made everything look sharp and clear, and close enough to reach out and touch. Looney, who do you got? Who'd she steal? Who'd she steal this time? She keeps stealing my stuffies. Looney, you cannot have my stuffies. Get your own. Bring it. I don't think the animal friends can stay with us because she's stealing them all. You bringing my animals? Have your own, silly. Here, can I trade? You can have this one. This is the one you already ruined. Here, take this one. Trade. Thank you. Have that one. Animal friends can't stay because she keeps taking them. You guys, my animals. Don't touch my animal friends. Naughty girl. Go get your stuff. Crazy girl. Love you. Yeah, one time, sweetie. We don't want to do repeats. Okay, a soft glow filled the air with the kind of light that made everything look sharp and clear and close enough to reach out and touch. Alec raced ahead, laughing and shouting, but soon encountered serious difficulties. For while he could always see the tree behind the next one, he could never see the next one itself, and was continually crashing into it. After several minutes of wildly dashing about, they all stopped for a breath of air. I think we're lost, panted the humbug, collapsing into a large berry bush. Gotta go up here. Sorry, the animal friends can't stay because they're going to get ruined. The animal friends can't stay. Huh? Looney making me put up the animal friends. Naughty Looney. Yeah, she'll end up stealing them if I leave them there. Okay, let's see. Hold on. Oh, this part's funny. I think we're lost, panted the humbug, collapsing into a large berry bush. Nonsense, shouted Alec from the high branch on which he sat. Do you know where we are? Asked Milo. Certainly, he replied. We're right here on this very spot. Besides, being lost is never a matter of not knowing where you are. It's a matter of not knowing where you aren't. And I don't care at all about where I'm not. This was much too complicated for the bug to figure out, and Milo had just begun repeating it to himself when Alec said, If you don't believe me, ask the giant, and he pointed to a small house tucked neatly behind two of the largest trees. Milo and Talk walked up to the door, whose brass nameplate read simply, The Giant, and knocked. Is that the one? So that's him. It says The Giant up on his little thing up there. It says The Giant. That's Milo knocking on his door. Looney, come on. Oh, naughty girl. Stop. I just gave you stuff. Go get it. She's being naughty tonight. All right. Good afternoon, the perfectly ordinary-sized man who answered... Oh, good afternoon, said the perfectly ordinary-sized man who answered the door. Are you the giant? Asked Talk doubtfully. To be sure, he replied proudly. I'm the smallest giant in the world. What can I do for you? Are we lost? Said Milo. That's a difficult question, said the giant. Why don't you go around the back and ask the midget? And he closed the door. They walked to the rear of the house, which looked exactly like the front, and knocked at the door, whose nameplate read, The Midget. How are you? Inquired the man, who looked exactly like the giant. So that's the midget. It's the same guy as the giant. I don't know if you can see, it's the same picture. Midget is the giant and the midget. Yeah, Looney's getting in trouble. I think she has to pee. You gotta pee? Yeah, all right. Be a good girl. Come here. You'll be good. Nutty loony. So, the midget and the giant. Where am I? Oh, okay. Where am I? Okay, why don't you go around back and ask the midget? And he closed the door. They walked around to the rear of the house, which looked exactly like the front, and knocked at the door whose nameplate read the midget. How are you? Inquired the man, who looked exactly like the giant. Are you the midget? Asked Hawk again, with a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Unquestionably, he answered. I'm the tallest midget in the world. How may I help you? So they're literally the same person. Do you think we're lost? Repeated Milo. That's a very complicated problem, he said. Why don't you go around to the side and ask the fat man? And he too quickly disappeared. The side of the house looked very like the front and back, and the door flew open the very instant they knocked. How nice of you to come by, exclaimed the man, who could have been the midget's twin brother. You must be the fat man, said Talk, learning not to count too much on appearance. The thinnest one in the world, he replied brightly. But if you have any questions, I suggest you try the thin man on the other side of the house. So there's the fat man. The fat man. As you can see, they're all the same picture. There's the giant. There's the midget. There's the fat man. And there's the thin man. I suggest you try the thin man on the other side of the house. Just as they suspected, the other side of the house looked the same as the front, the back, and the side, and the door was again answered by a man who looked precisely like the other three. What a pleasant surprise, he cried happily. I haven't had a visitor in as long as I can remember. Yeah, what's bricked up? How long is that? Asked Milo. I'm sure I don't know, he replied. Now, pardon me, I have to answer the door. But you just did, said Talk. Oh, yes, I'd forgotten. Are you the fattest thin man in the world? Asked Talk. Do you know one that's fatter? He asked impatiently. I think you're all the same man, said Milo emphatically. Shh, he cautioned, putting his finger up. Shh. I think you're all the same man. Shh. He cautioned, putting his finger to his lips and drawing Milo closer. Do you want to ruin everything? You see, to the tall men, I'm a midget, and to short men, I'm a giant. To the skinny ones, I'm a fat man, and to the fat ones, I'm a thin man. That way I can hold 4 jobs at once. As you can see, though, I'm neither tall nor short, nor fat nor thin. In fact, I'm quite ordinary. But there are so many ordinary men that no one asks their opinion about anything. Now, what is your question? I love this guy. He's like, shh, you're ruining it. Are we lost? Asked Milo again. Said the man, scratching his head. I haven't had such a difficult question in as long as I can remember. Would you mind repeating it? It slipped my mind. Milo asked the question again. My, the man mumbled. I know one thing for certain. It's much harder to tell whether you are lost than whether you were lost, for on many occasions, where you're going is exactly where you are. On the other hand, you'll often find that where you've been is not at all where you should have gone, and since it's much more difficult to find your way back from some place you've never left, I suggest you go there immediately and then decide. If you have any more questions, please ask the giant, and he slammed his door and pulled down the shade. I hope you're satisfied, said Alec when they'd returned from the house, and he bounced to his feet, bent down to awaken the snoring humbug, and started off more slowly this time in the direction of a large clearing. Do many people live here in the forest? Asked Milo as they trotted along together. Hold on, let me put all messages on. There we go. Oh, yes, they live in a wonderful city called Reality, he announced, smashing into one of the smaller trees and sending a cascade of nuts and leaves to the ground. It's right this way. In a few more steps, the forest opened before them, and off to the left, a magnificent metropolis appeared. The rooftops shone like mirrors, the walls glistened with thousands of precious stones, and the broad avenues were paved in silver. Is that it? Shouted Milo, running towards the shining streets. Oh, no, that's only illusion, said Alec. The real city is over there. What are illusions? Milo asked, for it was the loveliest city he'd ever seen. Illusions, explained Alec, are like mirages. And realizing that this didn't help, he continued, and mirages are things that aren't really there that you can see very clearly. How can you see something that isn't there? Yawned the humbug, who wasn't fully awake yet. Sometimes it's much simpler than seeing things that are, he said. For instance, if something is there, you can only see it with your eyes open, but if it isn't there, you can see it just as well with your eyes closed. That's why imaginary things are often easier to see than real ones. Then where is reality? Barked Talk. Right here, cried Alec, waving his arms. You're standing in the middle of Main Street. They looked around very carefully. Talk sniffed suspiciously at the wind, and the humbug gingerly stabbed his cane in the air, but there was nothing at all to see. It's really a very pleasant city, said Alex as he strolled down the street, pointing out several of the sights which didn't seem to be there, and tipping his cap to the passerbys. There were great crowds of people rushing along with their heads down, and they all appeared to know exactly where they were going as they darted around and around the non-existent streets, and in and out of the missing buildings. I don't see any city, said Milo very softly. Neither do they, remarked Alex sadly, but it hardly matters, for they don't miss it at all. It must be very difficult to live in a city you can't see, Milo insisted, jumping aside as a line of cars and trucks went by. Not at all, once you get used to it, said Alec, but let me tell you how it happened. And as they strolled along the bustling and busy avenue, he began. Many years ago, on this very spot, there was a beautiful city of fine houses and inviting spaces, and no one who lived here was ever in a hurry. The streets were full of wonderful things to see, and the people would often stop to look at them. Didn't they have any place to go? Asked Milo. To be sure, continued Alec, but as you know, the most important reason for going from one place to another is to see what's in between, and they took great pleasure in doing just that. Then one day, someone discovered that if you walked as fast as possible and looked at nothing but your shoes, you would arrive at your destination much more quickly. Soon everyone was doing it. They all rushed down the avenues and hurried along the boulevard, seeing nothing of the wonders and beauties of their city as they went. Milo remembered the many times he'd done the very same thing, and as hard as he tried, there weren't even things on his own street that he couldn't remember. No one paid any attention to how things looked, and as they moved faster and faster, everything grew uglier and dirtier. And as everything grew uglier and dirtier, they moved faster and faster. And at last a very strange thing began to happen. Because nobody cared, the city slowly began to disappear. Day by day, the buildings grew fainter and fainter, and the streets faded away, until at last it was entirely invisible. There was nothing to see at all. What did they do? The humbug inquired, suddenly taking an interest in things. Nothing at all, continued Alec. They went right on living here just as they'd always done, in the houses they could no longer see and on streets which had vanished, because nobody had noticed a thing, and that's the way they have all lived till this very day. Hasn't anyone told them? Asked Milo. It doesn't do any good, Alec replied, for they can never see what they're in too much of a hurry to look for. Why don't they live in illusions? Suggested the humbug. It's much prettier. Many of them do, he answered, walking in the direction of the forest once again. But it's just as bad to live in a place where what you do see isn't there as it is to live in one where what you don't see is. Perhaps someday you can have one city as easy to see as illusions and as hard to forget as a reality, Milo remarked. That will happen only when you bring back rhyme and reason, said Alex, smiling, for he had seen right through Milo's plans. Now let's hurry or we'll miss the evening concert. They followed him quickly up a flight of steps which couldn't be seen and through a door which didn't exist. In a moment they had left reality, which is sometimes a hard thing to tell, and stood in a completely different part of the forest. The sun was dropping slowly from sight, and stripes of purple and orange and crimson and gold piled themselves on top of the distant hills. The last shafts of light waited patiently for a flight of wrens to find their way home, and a group of anxious stars had already taken their places. "Here we are," cried Alec, and with a sweep of his arm he pointed towards an enormous symphony orchestra. "Isn't it a grand sight?" There were at least 1,000 musicians ranged in a great arc before them. To the left and right were the violins and cellos, whose bows moved in great waves. 19, pages are stuck together. This is relaxing. I know, isn't it a good book? And behind them, in the numberless profusion, the piccolos, flutes, clarinets, oboes, bassoons, horns, trumpets, trombones, and tubas were all playing at once. At the very rear, so far away that they could hardly be seen, were the percussion instruments, and lastly, in a long line up one side of the steep slope, were the solemn bass fiddles. On a high podium in front stood the conductor, a tall, gaunt man with deep-set eyes and a thin mouth, placed carelessly between his long pointed nose and his long pointed chin. He used no baton, but conducted with large sweeping movements, which seemed to start at his toes and work slowly up through his body and along his slender arms and end finally at the tips of his graceful fingers. Here's the conductor. That's the conductor. Let's get his funny little shoes. I'm glad you guys like it, because it's my favorite. Whew. Where am I? Okay. "I don't hear any music," said Milo. "That's right," said Alex. "You don't listen to this concert, you watch it. Now pay attention." As the conductor waved his arms, he molded the air like handfuls of soft clay, and the musicians carefully followed his every direction. "What are they playing?" asked Hawk, looking up inquisitively at Alec. "The sunset, of course. They play it every evening about this time." "They do?" said Milo quizzically. "Naturally," answered Alec. "They also play the morning, noon, and night, when, of course, it's morning, noon, or night. Why, there wouldn't be any color in the world unless they played it. Each instrument plays a different one," he explained, "and depending, of course, on what season it is and how the weather's to be, the conductor chooses his score and directs the day. But watch, the sun has almost set, and in a moment you can ask Chroma himself." So this is the big, hold on, you can see the big orchestra on this page. This is the huge orchestra. See all the people playing in their orchestra. Big orchestra. The last colors slowly faded from the western sky, and as they did, one by one, the instruments stopped until only the bass fiddles and their somber, slow movement were left to play the night, and a single set of silver bells brightened the constellations. The conductor let his arms fall limply at his sides and stood quite still as darkness claimed the forest. "That was a very beautiful sunset," said Milo, walking to the podium. "It should be," was the reply. "We've been practicing since the world began." And reaching down, the speaker picked Milo off the ground and set him on the music stand. "I am Chroma the Great," he continued, gesturing broadly with his hands. "Conductor of color, maestro of pigment, and director of the entire spectrum." "Do you play all day long?" asked Milo when he had introduced himself. "Ah, yes, all day, every day," he sang out, and then pirouetted gracefully around the platform. "I rest only at night, and even then they play on." "What would happen if you stopped?" asked Milo, who didn't quite believe that color happened that way. "See for yourself," roared Chroma, and he raised both hands high over his head. Immediately the instruments that were playing stopped, and all at once all color vanished. The world looked like an enormous coloring book that had never been used. Everything appeared in simple black outlines, and it looked as if someone with a set of paints the size of a house and a brush as wide could stay happily occupied for years. Then Chroma lowered his arms, and the instruments began again, and the color returned. You see what a dull place the world would be without color, he said, bowing until his chin almost touched the ground. But what pleasure to lead my violins in a serenade of spring green, or hear my trumpets blare out the blue sea, and then watch the oboes tinted all in warm yellow sunshine. And the rainbows are best of all, and blazing neon signs, and taxicabs with stripes, and the soft muted tones of a foggy day. We play them all. As Chroma spoke, Milo sat with his eyes wide open, and Alec, Talk, and the humbug locked in wonder. Now, I really must get some sleep, Chroma yawned. We've had lightning, fireworks, and parades for the last few nights, and I've had to be up to conduct them. But tonight is sure to be quiet. Then, putting his large hand on Milo's shoulder, he said, Be a good fellow and watch my orchestra till morning, will you? And be sure to wake me at 5:23 for sunrise. Good night, good night, good night. With that, he leapt slightly from the podium and, in 3 long steps, vanished into the forest. That's a good idea, said Talk, making himself comfortable in the grass, as the bug grumbled himself quickly to sleep, and Alec stretched out in midair. And Milo, full of thoughts and questions, curled up on the pages of tomorrow's music and eagerly awaited the dawn. She wants to know how Bluefish is. Chapter 11, Discord and Din. One by one, the hours passed, and at exactly 5:22, by Talk's very accurate clock, Milo carefully opened one eye, and in a moment the other. I think Looney's ready to come in. Looney girl. Hold on. Hi. I must sip of my drink. Hi. Looney, I put all the stuffies away, bud. I put all the stuffies away because you kept stealing them. No more stuffies. No more stuffies. He's looking for my stuffies. Oh no, fireworks. Yeah, the conductor plays the fireworks. He plays the colors of the fireworks. Not the sounds, he plays the colors. Okay, one by one the hours passed, and at exactly 5:22, by Talk's very accurate clock, Milo carefully opened one eye, and in a moment the other. Everything was still purple, dark, blue, and black, yet scarcely a minute remained to the long, quiet night. He stretched lazily, rubbed his eyelids, scratched his head, and shivered once as a greeting to the early morning mist. I must wake Chroma for the sunrise, he said softly. Then he suddenly wondered what it would be like to lead the orchestra and to color the world himself. The idea whirled through his thoughts until he quickly decided that since it couldn't be very difficult, and since they probably all knew what to do by themselves anyway, and since it did seem a shame to wake anyone so early, and since it might be his only chance to try, and since the musicians were already poised and ready, he would, but just for a little while. And so, as everyone slept peacefully on, Milo stood on tiptoes, raised his arms slowly in front of him, and made the slightest movement possible with the index finger of his right hand. It was now 5:23 a.m. Uh-oh. Naughty Milo. Milo's going to lead the orchestra himself, or he's trying. It's Milo standing up on the conductor's chair. Uh-oh. This part reminds me of like Fantasia, when Fantasia steals the alchemist's hat and starts sending the mops all over the place. That scene in Fantasia with Mickey Mouse where he steals the conductor's hat and makes accidental magic. As if understanding his signal perfectly, a single piccolo played a single note, and off in the east, a solitary shaft of cool lemon light flickered across the sky. Milo smiled happily and then cautiously crooked his finger again. This time, 2 more piccolos and a flute joined in, and 3 more rays of light danced lightly into view. Then, with both hands, he made a great circular sweep in the air and watched with delight as all of the musicians began to play at once. The cellos made the hills glow red, and the leaves and grass were tipped with the soft pale green as the violins began their song. Only the bass fiddles rested as each orchestra washed the forest in color. Milo was overjoyed because they were all playing for him, and just the way they should. Won't Chroma be surprised, he thought, signaling the musicians to stop. I'll wake him now. But instead of stopping, they continued to play even louder than before, until each color became more brilliant than he thought possible. Milo shielded his eyes with one hand and waved the other desperately, but the colors continued to grow brighter and brighter and brighter, until an even more curious thing began to happen. As Milo frantically conducted, the sky changed slowly from blue to tan and then to a rich magenta red. Flurries of light green snow began to fall, and the leaves on the trees and bushes turned a vivid orange. All the flowers suddenly appeared black. The gray rocks became a lovely, soft chartreuse, and even peacefully sleeping Talk changed from brown to a magnificent ultramarine. Nothing was the color it should have been, and yet the more he tried to straighten things out, the worse they became. I wish I hadn't started, he thought unhappily, as a pale blue blackbird flew by. There doesn't seem to be any way to stop them. For pictures now, okay. With Milo wincing at all the different colors. No, I don't know if we'll finish. I don't think we're gonna finish the whole thing tonight. Plus, we started late in my sinuses, but we'll read a couple more chapters. He tried very hard to do everything just the way Chroma had done, but nothing worked. The musicians played on faster and faster, and the purple sun raced quickly across the sky. In less than a minute, it had set, and once more in the west, and then, without any pause, risen again in the east. The sky was now quite yellow, and the grass a charming shade of lavender. 7 times the sun rose and almost as quickly disappeared as the colors kept changing. In just a few minutes, a whole week had gone by. At last, the exhausted Milo, afraid to call for help and on the verge of tears, dropped his hands to his sides. The orchestra stopped, the colors disappeared, and once again it was night. The time was 5:27 a.m. Wake up, everybody! Time for the sunrise, he shouted with relief, and quickly jumped from the music stand. What a marvelous rest, said Chroma, striding to the podium. I feel as though I'd slept for a week. My, I see we're a little late this morning. I'll have to cut my lunch hour short by 4 minutes. He tapped for attention, and this time the dawn proceeded perfectly. You did a fine job, he said, patting Milo on the head. Some day I'll let you conduct the orchestra yourself. Talk wagged his tail proudly, but Milo didn't say a word, and to this day, no one knows of the lost week but the few people who happened to be awake at 5:23 on that very strange morning. We'd better be getting along, said Talk, whose alarm had begun to ring again, for there's still a long way to go. Chroma nodded a fond goodbye as they all started back through the forest, and in honor of the visit he made all the wildflowers bloom in a breathtaking display. I'm sorry you can't stay longer, said Alex sadly. There's so much more to see in the Forest of Sight, but I suppose There's a lot to see everywhere, if only you keep your eyes open. They walked for a while, all silent in their thoughts, until they reached the car, and Alec drew a fine telescope from his shirt and handed it to Milo. "Carry this with you on your journey," he said softly, "for there is much worth noticing that often escapes the eye. Through it you can see everything from the tender moss in a sidewalk crack to the glow of the farthest star, and most important of all, you can see things as they really are, not just as they seem to be. It's my gift to you." Milo placed the telescope carefully in the glove compartment, and he reached up to shake Alec by the hand. Oh, sorry, my shoulder's bugging me. Then he stepped on the starter, and with his head full of strange new thoughts, drove out the far end of the forest. The easy rolling countryside now stretched before them in a series of dips and rises that leapt to one side of each crest and slid gently down the other in a way that made stomachs laugh and faces frown. As they topped the brow of the highest hill, a deep valley appeared ahead. The road, finally making up its mind, plummeted down as if anxious to renew acquaintance with the sparkling blue stream that flowed below. When they reached the floor of the valley, the wind grew stronger as it funneled through the rocks, and directly ahead a bright-colored speck grew larger and larger. "It looks like a wagon," cried Milo excitedly. "It is a wagon! A carnival wagon!" seconded Talk. And that's exactly what it was. Parked at the side of the road, painted bright red and looking quite deserted, on its side in enormous white letters bordered in black was the inscription "Cacophonous A Discord," and below, in slightly smaller black letters bordered in white, was "Doctor of Dissonance." So it's "Cacophonous A Discord, the Doctor of Dissonance." "Perhaps if someone's at home he might tell us how far we have to go," said Milo, parking next to the wagon. He tiptoed timidly up the 3 wooden steps to the door and tapped lightly. He leapt back in fright, for the moment he knocked there was a terrible crash from inside the wagon that sounded as if a whole set of dishes had been dropped from the ceiling onto hard stone floor. At the same time, the door flew open, and from the dark interior a hoarse voice inquired, "Have you ever heard a whole set of dishes dropped from the ceiling onto a hard stone floor?" Milo, who had tumbled back off the steps, sat up quickly, while Talk and the Humbug rushed from the car to see what had happened. "Well, have you?" insisted the voice, which was so raspy that it made you want to clear your own throat. "Not until just now," replied Milo, getting to his feet. "Ha! I thought not," said the voice happily. "Have you ever heard an ant wearing fur slippers walk across a thick wool carpet?" And before they could answer, he went on in his strange croaking way. "Well, don't just stand there in the cold. Come in, come in. It's lucky you happened by. None of you looks well." The faint glow of a ceiling lamp dimly illuminated the wagon as they cautiously stepped inside. Talk first, eager to defend against all dangers. Milo next, frightened but curious, and the Humbug last, ready at any moment to run for his life. "That's right. Now let's have a look at you," he said. "Ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. Very bad, very bad. A serious case." "Hi, Butterfly." "I am up," said Hi. "Hi." The dusty wagon was lined with shelves full of curious boxes and jars of a kind found in old apothecary shops. It looked as though it hadn't been swept out in years. Bits and pieces of equipment lay strewn all over the floor, and at the rear was a heavy wooden table covered with books, bottles, and bric-a-brac. "Have you ever heard a blindfolded octopus unwrap a cellophane-covered bathtub?" he inquired again, as the air was filled with a loud crinkling, snapping sound. Sitting at the table, busily mixing and measuring, was the man who had invited them in. He was wearing a long white coat with a stethoscope around his neck and a small round mirror attached to his forehead. And the only really noticeable things about him were his tiny mustache and his enormous ears, each of which was fully as large as his head. "Are you a doctor?" asked Milo, trying to feel as well as possible. I am Cacophonous A. Discord, Doctor of Dissonance, roared the man, and as he spoke, several small explosions and a grinding crash were heard. What does the A stand for? Stammered the nervous bug, too frightened to move. That's the doctor with his huge ears. Look at his ears. His ears are huge. He's got a big mirror on his head. He's got a big mirror on his head and then huge ears. Yeah, he's Dumbo the elephant. And then there's Talk and Milo over here in the background with the humbug. There's Milo, Talk, the humbug coming in the door. And he's got like all these shelves full of stuff. Yeah, we're all having a good night, honey. So what does the A stand for? Stammered the nervous bug, too frightened to move. As loud as possible, bellowed the doctor. The A stands for as loud as possible, bellowed the doctor, and two screeches and a bump accompanied his response. Now step a little closer and stick out your tongues. Here he is again. This crazy guy. He's got a tiny little mustache, giant ears. Weird guy. Now step a little closer and just stick out your tongues. Just as I suspected, he continued, opening a large dusty book and thumbing through the pages. You're suffering from a severe lack of noise. He began to jump around the wagon, snatching bottles from the shelves until he had a large assortment in various colors and sizes collected at one end of the table. All were neatly labeled. Loud cries, soft cries, bangs, bongs, smashes, crashes, swishes, swooshes, snaps and crackles, whistles and gongs, squeaks, squawks, and miscellaneous uproar. After pouring a little of each into a large glass beaker, he stirred the mixture thoroughly with a wooden spoon, watching intently as it smoked and steamed and boiled and bubbled. Be ready in just a moment, he explained, rubbing his hands. Milo had never seen such unpleasant-looking medicine, and wasn't at all anxious to try just any. Just what kind of a doctor are you? He said as he asked suspiciously. Well, you might say I'm a specialist, said the doctor. I specialize in noise, all kinds, from the loudest to the softest, and from the slightly annoying to the terribly unpleasant. For instance, have you ever heard a square-wheeled steamroller ride over a street full of hard-boiled eggs? He asked, and as he did, all that could be heard were loud crunching sounds. But who would want all those terrible noises? Asked Milo, holding his ears. Everybody does, said the surprised doctor. They're very popular today. Why, I'm kept so busy I can hardly fill the orders for noise pills, racket lotion, clamor salve, and hubbub tonic. That's all people seem to want these days. He stirred the beaker of liquid a few more times, and then, as the steam cleared, he continued. Business wasn't always so good. Years ago, everyone wanted pleasant sounds, and except for a few orders during wars and earthquakes, things were very bad. But then the big cities were built, and there was a great need for honking horns, screeching trains, clanging bells, deafening shouts, piercing shrieks, gurgling drains, and all the rest of those wonderfully unpleasant sounds we use so much of today. Without them, people would be very unhappy. So I make sure that people get as much of what they want. Why, if you take a little of my medicine every day, you'll never have to hear a beautiful sound again. Here, try some. If it's all the same to you, I'd rather not, said the humbug, backing away to the very far corner of the wagon. I don't want to be cured of beautiful sounds, insisted Milo. Besides, growled Talk, who decided that he didn't much like Dr. Discord? There is no such illness as lack of noise. Of course not, replied the doctor, pouring himself a small glass of the liquid. That's what makes it so difficult to cure. I only treat illnesses that don't exist. That way, if I can't cure them, there's no harm done. Just one of the precautions of the trade, he concluded, and seeing that no one was about to take his medicine, he again reached towards the shelf, removed a dark amber bottle, dusted it carefully, and placed it on the table in front of him. Love you too, sweetie. Very well. If you want to go, please don't. Very well. If you want to go all through life suffering from a noise deficiency, I'll give it all to the Din for his lunch, he said, and he uncorked the bottle with a hollow-sounding pop. For a moment, everything was quiet as Milo, Talk, and the humbug looked intently at the bottle, wondering what Dr. Discord would do next. Then, very faintly, at first they heard a low rumbling that sounded miles away. It grew louder and louder and louder, and closer and closer and closer, until it became a deafening, ear-splitting roar that seemed to be coming from inside the tiny bottle. Then, from the bottle, a thick bluish smog spiraled to the ceiling, spread out, and gradually assumed the shape of a thick bluish smog with hands, feet, bright yellow eyes, and a large frowning mouth. As soon as the smog had gotten completely out of the bottle, it grasped the beaker of liquid, tilted back what would have been its head, if it really had one, and drank it all in 3 gulps. "Ah, that was good, master," he bellowed, shaking the whole wagon. "I thought you'd never let me out. Terribly cramped in there." "This is my assistant, the awful Din," said Dr. Discord. "You must forgive his appearance, for he really doesn't have any. You see, he is an orphan whom I raised myself without benefit of governess or any other assistance for—" "No nurse is good nurse," interrupted the Din, doubling up with laughter, if you can imagine a thick bluish smog doubling up with laughter. "For I found him," continued the doctor, ignoring this outburst, "living alone and unwanted in an abandoned soda bottle, without family or relatives." "No niece is good niece," roared the Din again, with a laugh that sounded like several sirens going off at once, and he slapped it where his knee should have been. "And brought him here," continued the exasperated Discord, "where, despite his lack of shape or fixtures, I trained—" "No nose is good nose," thundered Din, once again, as he collapsed in another fit of hysterics and clutched his sides. This guy is so weird. That's the Din. He's just a big smog. He's a big smog bubble. There's Milo and the Din. "The terrible Din. No nose is good nose." I know, right? "No nose is good nose," thundered the Din, once again as he collapsed in another fit of hysterics and clutched his sides. "I trained him as my assistant in the business of concocting and dispensing noise," finished the doctor, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "No noise is good noise," exclaimed the humbug, happily trying to catch the spirit of things. "That's not funny at all," sobbed the Din, who went to a corner and sulked. "What is a Din?" asked Milo, when he had recovered from the shock of seeing him appear. "You mean you've never met that awful Din before?" said Dr. Discord in a surprised tone. "Why, I thought everyone had." "When you're playing in your room and making a great amount of noise, what do they tell you to stop?" "That awful Din," admitted Milo. "When the neighbors are playing their radio too loud late at night, what do you wish they'd turn down?" "That awful Din," answered Talk. "When the street on your block is being repaired and the pneumatic drills are working all day, what does everyone complain of?" "The dreadful row," volunteered the humbug brightfully. "The dreadful row," cried the anguished Din, "was my grandfather. He perished in the great silence epidemic of 1712. Milo felt so sorry for the unhappy Din that he gave him his handkerchief, which was immediately covered in bluish smoggy tears. "Thank you," groaned the Din. "That's very kind, but I certainly can't understand why you don't like noise," he said. "Why, I heard an explosion last week that was so lovely I cried for 2 days." The very thought of it upset him so much that he began to sob all over again in a way that sounded almost exactly like a handful of fingernails being scratched across a mile-long blackboard. He buried his head in the doctor's lap. "He's very sensitive, isn't he?" asked Milo, trying to comfort the emotional Din. "It's true," agreed Dr. Discord, "but he's right, you know, for noise is the most valuable thing in the world." "King Azaz says words are," said Milo. "Nonsense," the doctor roared. Why, when a baby wants food, how does he ask? He screams, answered the din, looking up happily. And when an automobile wants gas, it chokes, he shouted again, jumping for joy. When a river wants water, what does it do? It creaks, bellowed the din as he collapsed into a fit of uncontrollable laughter. And what happens when a new day begins? It breaks, he gasped joyfully from the floor, a look of utter bliss covering his face. You see how simple it is, the doctor said to Milo. Love the voice. Yeah, I try to do funny voices. No nose is good nose. It creaks, bellowed the din as he collapsed into a fit of uncontrollable laughter. And what happens when a new day begins? It breaks, he gasped joyfully from the floor, a look of utter bliss covering his face. You see how simple it is, the doctor said to Milo, who didn't see it all. And then, turning to the tear-stained, smiling din, he replied, Isn't it time for you to go? Where to? Asked Milo. Perhaps we're going the same way. I think not, said the din, replied, picking up an armful of empty sacks from the table, for I'm going on my noise collection rounds. You see, once a day I travel throughout the kingdom and collect all the wonderfully horrible and beautifully unpleasant noises that have been made, pack them into my sacks, and bring them back here for the doctor to make his medicines from. And a good job he does, says the Dr. Discord, pounding his fist on the table. So wherever the noise is, that is where you will find me, said the din, with an appreciative smile. And I must hurry along, for I understand that today there is to be a screech, several loud crashes, and a bit of pandemonium. And in which direction are you going? Asked the doctor, mixing another brew. To Digitopolis, replied Milo. How unfortunate, he said, as the din shuffled towards the door. How very unfortunate, for then you must pass through the Valley of Sound. Is that bad? Asked the perpetually worried humbug. The din paused in the doorway with a look of extreme horror on his almost featureless face, and the doctor shuddered in a way that sounded very much like a fast-moving freight train being derailed onto a mountain of custard. Well, you might ask, for you will find out soon enough, was all he would say as he sadly bade them farewell, and the din galloped off on his rounds. No nose is good nose. So silly. All right, The Silent Valley, Chapter 12. Oh, the din voice giving me a throat ache. Let's have a sip of water. The din voice. Try to do the din voice to make my throat hurt. How agreeable and pleasant this valley is, thought Milo, as once again they bounced along the highway with the humbug humming snatches of old songs to his own vast amusement, and Talk sniffing contentedly at the wind. I really can't see what Dr. Discord was so concerned about. There certainly couldn't be anything unpleasant about this road. And just as the thought crossed his mind, they passed through a heavy stone gateway, and everything was very different. At first, it was difficult to tell just what had changed. It all looked the same, and it all smelled the same. But for some reason, nothing sounded the same. I wonder what's happened, said Milo. At least that's what he tried to say. For although his lips moved, not a sound came from his mouth. And suddenly he realized what it was. For Talk was no longer ticking, and the humbug, although happily singing, was doing so in complete silence. The wind no longer rustled the leaves, the car no longer squeaked, and the insects no longer buzzed in the fields. Not the slightest thing could be heard. and it felt as if, in some mysterious way, a switch had been thrown and all the sound in the world had been turned off at the same instant. The humbug, suddenly realizing what had happened, leapt to his feet in terror, and Talk worriedly checked to see if he was still keeping time. It was certainly a strange feeling to know that no matter how loudly or softly you chatted or rattled or bumped, it all came out the same way, as nothing. How dreadful, thought Milo as he slowed down the car. The three of them began to talk and shout at once with absolutely no result, until, hardly noticing where they were going, they had driven into the midst of a large crowd of people marching along the road. Some of them were singing at the tops of their non-existent voices, and the others were carrying large signs which proclaimed, "Down with silence! All quiet is no diet! It's laudable to be audible! More sound for all!" Hi, Izzy. Welcome in. And one enormous banner stated simply, "Hear, hear." Like here. Hearing, here. Hear, hear. Except for these and the big brass cannon being pulled along behind, they all looked very much like the residents of any other small valley to which you've never been. When the car had stopped, one of them held up a placard which said, "Welcome to the Valley of Sound." And the others all cheered as loudly as possible, which was not very loud at all. "Have you come to help us?" asked another, stepping forward with his question. "Please," added a third. Milo tried desperately to say who he was and where he was going, but to no avail. As he did, 4 more placards announced, "Look carefully," or listen, crossed out, "look carefully, and we will tell you of our terrible misfortune." It's crossed out. It says listen, because they can't hear, so they crossed it out and said, "Look carefully." Yeah, Mr. Meow is over there. Mr. Kitty. Stratty, you can come sit with me. Come on. Come sit on the pillow. You ate plenty. Come on. Come on. Come on. You come sit with me. Yeah. Come on. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Mr. Meow. Come on. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Hi. Oh. Yeah. Come sit. Here's our Mr. Meow. Mr. Stratty Meow. And while 2 of them held up a large blackboard, a third, writing as fast as he could, explained why there was nothing but quiet in the Valley of Sound. Come on up, Stratty. Get up here, bud. Yeah. You want to read the book with us? Yeah. You can read the book with us. You can read the book with us. Go read the book with us. What? Sit here. Okay. They explained why there was nothing but quiet in the Valley of Sound. "At a place in the valley not far from here," he began, "where the echoes used to gather and the winds came to rest, there is a great stone fortress, and in it lives the Sound Keeper who rules this land. When the old King of Wisdom drove the demons into the distant mountains, he appointed her guardian of all sounds and noises, past, present, and future. For years she ruled as a wise and beloved monarch, each morning at sunrise releasing the day's new sounds, to be borne by the winds throughout the kingdom, and each night at moonset, gathering in the old sounds to be catalogued and filed in the vast storage vaults below." The writer paused for a moment to mop his brow, and then, since the blackboard was full, he erased it completely and continued anew from the top. "She was generous to a fault, and provided us all with the sound we could possibly
provided us with all the sound we could possibly use, for singing as we worked, for bubbling pots of stew, for the chop of an axe and the crash of a tree, for the creak of a hinge and the hoot of an owl, Julie's owl, for the squish of a shoe in the mud, and the friendly tapping of rain on the roof, and for the sweet music of pipes and the sharp snap of winter ice cracking on the ground. Those are all the people, by the way. I didn't show you that picture. Those are all the people protesting with their little signs. The signs that said, here, here, and give us back our sound, basically. All quiet is no diet, more sound for all, down with silence. So they're all protesting. They want their sounds back. They said, give us our sound back. The sharp snap of winter ice cracking on the ground. He paused again as a tear of longing rolled from his cheek to lip with the sweet salty taste of an old memory. And all these sounds, when once used, would be carefully placed in alphabetical order and neatly kept for future reference. Everyone lived in peace, and the valley flourished as the happy home of sound. But then things began to change. Slowly at first, and then in a rush, more people came to settle here and brought with them new ways and new sounds, some very beautiful and some less so. But everyone was so busy with the things that had to be done that they scarcely had time to listen at all. And as you know, a sound which is not heard disappears forever and is not to be found again. People laughed less and grumbled more, sang less and shouted more, and the sounds they made grew louder and uglier. It became difficult to hear even the birds or the breeze, and soon everyone stopped listening for them. He again cleared the blackboard as the humbug choked back a sob and continued writing. The sound keeper grew worried and disconsolate. Every day there were fewer sounds to be collected, and most of those were hardly worth keeping. Many people thought it was the weather, and others blamed the moon, but the general consensus of opinion held that the trouble began at the time that rhyme and reason were banished. But no matter what the cause, no one knew what to do. Then one day Dr. Discord appeared in the valley with his wagon of medicines and the bluish, smoggy din. He made a thorough examination and promised to cure everyone of everything, and the sound keeper let him try. He gave several bad-tasting spoonfuls of medicine to every adult and child, and it worked, but not really as expected, for he cured everybody of everything but noise. The sound keeper became furious. She chased him from the valley forever, and then issued the following decree. From this day forward, the Valley of Sound shall be silent. Since sound is no longer appreciated, I hereby abolish it. Please return all unused amounts to the fortress immediately. And that's the way it has been ever since, he concluded sadly. There is nothing we can do to change it, and each day new hardships are reported. A small man with his arms full of letters and messages pushed through the crowd and offered them to Milo. Milo took one, which read, Dear Soundkeeper, we had a thunderstorm last week, and the thunder still hasn't arrived. How long should we wait? Yours truly, a friend. He made me jump because he said it really now because I'm still awake. Oh, Daddy made you jump. You've been up later than 10 before. Then he took a telegram which stated, Band concert, great success, stop when we may expect the music stop. Now you see, continued the writer, why you must help us attack the fortress and free the sound. What can I do, wrote Milo. You must visit the soundkeeper and bring from the fortress one sound, no matter how small, with which to load our cannon. For if we can reach the walls with the slightest noise, they will collapse and free the rest. It won't be easy, for she is hard to deceive, but you must try. Milo thought for just a moment, and then, with a resolute, I shall, he volunteered to go. Yeah, thunderstorms. Well, they said the sound of the thunder never got there. They had a thunderstorm, but because they can't hear anything, the sound of the thunder never arrived. Am I a librarian because I'm checking you out? You mean, am I a book? Are you a book? Are you a library book? Because I'm checking you out. Hey, kitty. The kitty's over there. Kitty cat. Come sit. Come sit. Hi. Alright, where am I? Let's see. Oh. Hi, kitty. Don't grab my book. Within a few minutes, he stood bravely at the fortress door. Knock, knock, he wrote neatly on a piece of paper, which he pushed under the crack. In a moment, the great portal swung open, and as it closed behind him, a gentle voice sang out, "Right this way, I'm in the parlor." "Can I talk now?" cried Milo happily, hearing his voice once again. "Yes, but only in here," she replied softly. "Now do come into the parlor." Milo walked slowly down the long hallway, and into the little room where the soundkeeper sat, listening intently to an enormous radio set, whose switches, dials, knobs, and meters and speaker covered one whole wall, and which at the moment was playing nothing. "Isn't that lovely?" she sighed. "It's my favorite program. 15 minutes of silence. And after that, there's a half hour of quiet." Kitty. "And then an interlude of lull. Why, did you know that there are almost as many kinds of stillness as there are sounds? But sadly enough, no one pays any attention to them these days." "Have you ever heard the wonderful silence just before the dawn?" she inquired. "Or the quiet and calm just as a storm ends? Or perhaps you know the silence when you haven't the answer to a question you've been asked? Or the hush of a country road at night? Or the expectant pause in a room full of people when someone is just about to speak? Or, most beautiful of all, the moment after the door closes and you're all alone in the whole house? Each one is different, you know, and all very beautiful if you listen carefully." Yeah, silly kitty cat. He's behind me now. He's behind us now. He's over here. Up here. There he is. He's like right behind the camera. There you go. Silly boy. He's on the other side of the camera. As she spoke, the thousands of little bells and chimes which covered her from head to toe tinkled softly. Stratus, he's rubbing on my camera. What are you doing, silly? Come sit over here. Stratus, silly cat, what are you doing? Get over here. Come here. Get over here. Get over here. You're gonna knock my camera over. He already ate. He's always hungry, but he did already eat. I'm sure that's what he wants is more food, but he did eat already. You're not getting second dinner, kitty. You gotta wait a little while. He wants second dinner. You want second dinner? That's why I put the other animals in the crate. Yeah, he's a hungry kitty cat. Get over here, Stratty. Get over here. I know you are a big boy. Oh, okay. Let me see. Where was I? As she spoke, the thousands of little bells and chimes which covered her from head to toe tinkled softly, and as if in reply, the telephone began to ring too. For someone who loves silence, she certainly talks a great deal, thought Milo. At one time, I was able to listen to any sound made any place at any time, the soundkeeper remarked, pointing towards the radio wall. But now I merely... Pardon me, interrupted Milo as the phone continued to ring, but aren't you going to answer it? Oh, no, not in the middle of a program, she replied, and turned up the silence a little bit louder. But it may be important, insisted Milo. Not at all, she assured him. It's only me. It gets so lonely around here with no sounds to distribute or collect that I call myself 7 or 8 times a day just to see how I am. How are you? He asked politely. Not very well, I'm afraid. I seem to have a touch of static, she complained. But what brings you here, of course? Oh, but what brings you here? Of course, you've come to tour the vaults. Well, they're usually open to the public only on Mondays from 2 to 4, but since you've traveled so far, we'll have to make an exception. Follow me, please. She quickly bounced to her feet with a chorus of jingles and chimes and started down the hallway. Don't you just love jingles and chimes? I do, she answered quickly. Besides, they're very convenient, for I'm always getting lost in this big fortress, and all I have to do is listen for them, and then I know exactly where I am. They entered a tiny cage-like elevator and traveled down for fully fully 3/4 of a minute, stopping finally in an immense vault whose long lines of file drawers and storage bins stretched in all directions, from where he began to where they ended, and from floor to ceiling. Every sound that's ever been made in history is kept here, said the soundkeeper, skipping down one of the corridors with Milo in hand. For instance, look here. She opened one of the drawers and pulled out a small brown envelope. This is the exact tune George Washington whistled when he crossed the Delaware on that icy night in 1777. Milo peered into the envelope, and sure enough, that's exactly what was in it. But why do you collect them all? He asked as she closed the drawer. If we didn't collect them, said the soundkeeper as they continued to stroll the vault, the air would be full of old sounds and noises, bouncing around and bumping into things. It would be terribly confusing. It would be terribly, sorry, there's like a misprint here. It's just like the thing is washed out. It would be terribly confusing because you'd never know whether you were listening to an old one or a new one. Besides, I do like to collect things, and there are more sounds than almost anything else. Why, I have everything here from the buzz of a mosquito 1,000,000 years ago to what your mother said to you this morning. And if you come back here in 2 days, I'll tell you what she said tomorrow. It's very simple. Let me show you. Say a word, any word. Hello, said Milo, for that was all he could think of. Now, where do you think it went? She asked with a smile. I don't know, said Milo, shrugging his shoulder. I always thought that most people do, she hummed, peering down one of the corridors. Now let me see. First we find the cabinet with today's sounds. Here it is. Then we look under G for greetings, then under M for Milo, and here it is already in its envelope. So you see, the whole system is quite automatic. It's a shame we hardly use it anymore. That's wonderful, gasped Milo. May I have one little sound as a souvenir? Certainly, she said with pride, and then immediately, thinking better of it, added, not. And don't try to take one, because it's strictly against the rules. Milo was crestfallen. He had no idea how to steal a sound, even the smallest one, for the soundkeeper always had at least one eye carefully focused on him. Now for a look at the workshops, she cried, whisking him through another door and into a large abandoned laboratory full of old pieces of equipment, all untended and rusting. This is where we used to invent the sounds, she said wistfully. Do they have to be invented? Asked Milo, who seemed surprised at almost everything she told him. I thought they just were. No one realizes how much trouble we go through to make them, she complained. Why, at one time this shop was crowded and busy from morning to night. But how do you invent a sound? Milo inquired. Oh, that's very easy, she said. First you must decide exactly what the sound looks like, for each sound has its own exact shape and size. Then you make some of them here in the shop and grind each one 3 times into an invisible powder and throw a little of each into the air every time you need it. But I've never seen a sound, Milo insisted. You never see them out there, she said, waving her arm in the general direction of everywhere, except every once in a while on a very cold morning when they freeze. It's like when your breath freezes and then you see your breath. Except every once in a while on a very cold morning when they freeze. But in here we see them all the time. Here, let me show you. She picked up a padded stick and struck a nearby bass drum 6 times. 6 large, woolly, fluffy cotton balls, each about 2 feet across, rolled silently out into the floor. You see, she said, putting some of them into a large grinder. Now listen. And she took a pinch of the invisible powder and threw it into the air with a boom, 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 boom. Do you know what a hand clap looks like? Milo shook his head. Try it, she commanded. He clapped his hands once, and a single sheet of clean white paper fluttered to the floor. He tried it 3 more times, and 3 more sheets of paper did the very same thing. And then he applauded as fast as he could, and a great cascade of papers filled the air. It's him clapping out paper. It's Milo clapping out sheets of paper. Isn't that simple? And it's the same for all sounds. If you think about it, you'll soon know what each one looks like. Take laughter, for instance, she said, laughing brightly, and 1,000 tiny, brightly colored bubbles flew up into the air and popped noiselessly. Or speech, she continued. Some of it is light and airy, some sharp and pointed, but most of it, I'm afraid, is just heavy and dull. How about music? Milo said excitedly. Right over here, we weave it on our looms. Symphonies are the large, beautiful carpets with all the rhythms and melodies woven in. Concertos are these tapestries, and all the other bolts of cloth are serenades, waltzes, overtures, and rhapsodies. And we also have some of the songs that you often sing, she cried, holding up a handful of brightly colored handkerchiefs. She stopped for a moment and said sadly, we even had one section over there that did nothing but put the sound of the ocean into seashells. There was once such a happy place. Then why don't you make sound for everyone now? He shouted so eagerly that the soundkeeper leapt back in surprise. Don't shout so, young man. If there's one thing we need more of around here, it's less noise. Now come with me and I'll tell you all about it. And put that down. Immediately. Her last remark was directed toward Milo's efforts to stuff one of the large drum beats into his back pocket. They returned quickly to the parlor, and when the soundkeeper had settled herself in a chair and carefully turned the radio to a special hour of hush, Milo asked his question once again, in a somewhat lower voice. It doesn't make me happy to hold back the sounds, she began softly, for if we listen to them carefully, they can sometimes tell us things far better than words. But if that's so, asked Milo, and he had no doubt that it was, shouldn't you release them? Never, she cried. They just use them to make horrible noises, which are ugly to see and worse to hear. I leave all that to Dr. Discord and that awful, awful din. But some noises are good sounds, aren't they? He insisted. That may be true, she replied stubbornly, but if they won't make the sounds that I like, they won't make any. But, he started to say, and it got no further than that, for while he was about to say that he didn't think that was quite fair, a thought to which the obstinate soundkeeper might not have taken kindly, he suddenly discovered the way he would carry his little sound from the fortress. In the instant between saying the word and before it sailed off into the air, he had clamped his lips shut, and the but was trapped in his mouth, all made but not spoken. Well, I mustn't keep you all day, she said impatiently. Now turn your pockets out so that I can see that you didn't steal anything and you can be on your way. When he had satisfied the soundkeeper, he nodded his farewell, for it would have been most impractical to say thank you or good afternoon, and raced out the door. He's keeping his butt in his mouth. He went, but. And then the word formed, and then he kept it in his mouth so that he can steal it. With his mouth shut tight, this is chapter 13, Unfortunate Conclusions. I think this might be the last one we'll do for tonight because I'm getting tired. With his mouth shut tight and his feet moving as fast as thoughts could make them, Milo ran all the way back to the car. There was great excitement when he arrived, as talk raced happily down the road to greet him. The humbug personally accepted all congratulations from the crowd. Where's the sound? Someone hastily scribbled on the blackboard, and they all waited anxiously for the reply. Milo caught his breath, picked up the chalk, and explained simply, It's on the tip of my tongue. Several people excitedly threw their hats into the air. Some shouted what would have been a loud hurrah, and the rest pushed the heavy cannon into place. They aimed it directly at the thickest part of the forest wall and packed it full of gunpowder. Milo stood on tiptoe, leaned over into the cannon's mouth, and parted his lips. The small sound dropped silently to the bottom, and everything was ready. Milo loading the cannon. He's putting the word that he had in his mouth into the cannon to load it. The small sound dropped silently to the bottom, and everything was ready. In another moment, the fuse was lit and sputtering. I hope no one gets hurt, thought Milo, and before he had time to think again, an immense cloud of gray and white smoke leapt from the gun, and along with it, so softly that it was hardly heard, came the sound of "but." It flew towards the wall for several seconds in a high, lazy arc, and then struck ever so lightly just to the right of the big door. For an instant there was an ominous stillness, quieter and more silent than ever before, as if even the air was holding its breath. And then, almost immediately, there was a blasting, roaring, thundering smash, followed by a crushing, shattering, bursting crash, as every stone in the fortress came toppling to the ground, and the vaults burst open, spilling the sounds of history into the wind. Every sound that had ever been uttered or made, from way back to when there were none, to way up when there were too many, came hurtling out of the debris in a way that sounded as though everyone in the world was laughing, whistling, shouting, crying, singing, whispering, humming, screaming, coughing and sneezing all at the same time. There were bits of old speeches floating about, as well as recited lessons, gunshots from old wars, babies' cries, auto horns, waterfalls, electric fans, galloping horses, and a great deal of everything else. For a while there was total and deafening confusion, and then almost as quickly as they'd come, all the old sounds disappeared over the hill in search of their new freedom, and things were normal again. The people quickly went about their busy, talkative business, and as the smoke and dust cleared, only Milo, Talk, and the Humbug noticed the soundkeeper sitting disconsolately on a pile of rubble. There's the soundkeeper, very sad that her vaults just got destroyed. And there's Talk and Milo and the Humbug, and there's all the people in the background the town people, who they just freed all their sounds. Yeah, this is the last chapter, then we go to sleep. With just a couple more pages. Oh, last chapter for me too, because I'm getting tired. We all getting tired. I'm terribly sorry, said Milo sympathetically, as the three of them went to console her, but we had to do it, added Talk, sniffing around the ruins. What a terrible mess, observed the Humbug, with his knack for saying exactly the wrong thing. The soundkeeper looked around with an expression of unrelieved sadness on her unhappy face. It will take years to collect all those sounds again, she sobbed, and even longer to put them back in proper order. But it's all my fault, for you can't improve sound by having only silence. The problem is to use each at the proper time. As she spoke, the familiar and unmistakable squinch, squanch of the Din's heavy footsteps could be heard plodding over the hill, and when he finally appeared, he was dragging an incredibly large sack behind him. Can anyone use these sounds? He puffed, mopping his forehead. They all came over the hill at once, and none of them are awful enough for me. The soundkeeper peered into the sack, and there were all the sounds which had burst from the walls. How nice of you to return them, she cried happily. You and the doctor must come by for an evening of beautiful music when my fortress is repaired. The thought of it so horrified the Din that he excused himself immediately and dashed down the road in a great panic. I hope I haven't offended him, she said with some concern. He only likes unpleasant sounds, volunteered Talk. Ah, yes, she sighed. I keep forgetting that many people do. But I suppose they are necessary, for you'd never really know how pleasant one was unless you knew how unpleasant it wasn't. She paused for a moment, then continued, If only Rhyme and Reason were here, I'm sure things would improve. That's why we're going to rescue them, said Milo proudly. What a long, hard journey that will be. You'll need some nourishment, she cried, handing Milo a small brown package, neatly wrapped and tied with string. Now remember, they're not for eating, but for listening, because you'll often be hungry for sounds as well as food. Here are street noises at night, train whistles a long way off, dry leaves burning, busy department stores, crunching toast, creaking bed springs, and of course all kinds of laughter. There's a little of each, and in far off lonely places I think you'll be glad to have them. I'm sure we will, replied Milo gratefully. Just take this road to the sea and turn left, she told them. You'll soon be in Digitopolis. And almost before she had finished, they had said goodbye and left the valley behind them. The shoreline was peaceful and flat, and the calm sea bumped it playfully along the sandy beach. In the distance, a beautiful island covered with palm trees and flowers beckoned invitingly from the sparkling water. Nothing can possibly go wrong now, cried the humbug happily, and as soon as he'd said it, he leapt from the car as if struck by a pin, and sailed all the way to the little island. And we'll have plenty of time, answered Talk, who hadn't noticed that the bug was missing, and he too suddenly leapt into the air and disappeared. It certainly couldn't be a nicer day, agreed Milo, who was too busy looking at the road to see that the others had gone, and in a split second he was gone also. He landed next to Talk and the terrified humbug on the tiny island, which now looked completely different. Instead of palms and flowers, there were only rocks and the twisted stumps of long dead trees. It certainly didn't seem like the same place they had seen from the road. Pardon me, said Milo to the first man who happened by. Can you tell me where I am? Pardon me, replied the man. Can you tell me who I am? The man was dressed in a shaggy tweed jacket and knickers, with long woolen stockings and a cap that had a peak both front and back, and he seemed as confused as he could be. You must know who you are, said Milo impatiently. Well, you must know where you are, he replied with equal annoyance. Oh dear, this is going to be difficult, Milo whispered to Talk. I wonder if we can help him. They conferred for a few minutes, and finally the bug looked up and said, Can you describe yourself? Yes, indeed, the man replied happily. I'm as tall as can be, and he grew up straight until all that could be seen of him were his shoes and stockings. And I'm as short as can be, and he shrank down to the size of a pebble. And I'm as generous as can be, he said, handing each of them a large red apple. And I'm as selfish as can be, he snarled, grabbing them back again. I'm as strong as can be, he roared, lifting an enormous boulder over his head. And I'm as weak as I can be, he gasped, staggering under the weight of his hat. I'm as smart as can be, he remarked in 12 different languages. And I'm as stupid as can be, he admitted, putting both feet in one shoe. I'm as graceful as can be, he hummed, balancing on one toe. And I'm as clumsy as can be, he cried, sticking his thumb in his eye. I'm as fast as I can be, he announced, running around the island twice in no time at all. And I'm as slow as I can be, he complained, waving goodbye to a snail. Is that any help to you? Once again they conferred in busy whispers until all three agreed. It's really very simple, said the humbug, twirling his cane. If everything you say is true, added Talk, then without a doubt, Milo concluded brightly, you must be Canby. Canby? Oh, because I'm as strong as can be, and I'm as weak as can be. Weak as can be. So he said, you must be Canby. Oh, yes, of course, the man shouted. Why didn't I think of that? I'm as happy as can be. Then he quickly sat down and put his head in his hands and sighed, but I'm also as sad as can be. Now, will you tell me where we are? Said Talk as he looked around to the desolate island. To be sure, said Canby. You're on the island of conclusions. Make yourself at home. You're apt to be here for some time. But how did we get here? Asked Milo, who was still a bit puzzled by being here at all. You jumped, of course, explained Canby. That's the way almost everyone gets here. It's really quite simple. Every time you decide something without having a good reason, you jump to conclusions. Whether you like it or not, it's such an easy trip to make that I've been here hundreds of times. But this is such an unpleasant-looking place, Milo remarked. Yes, that's true, admitted Canby. It does look much better from a distance. As he spoke, at least 8 or 9 more people sailed onto the island from every direction possible. Well, I'm going to jump right back, announced the humbug, who took 2 or 3 practice bends, leaped as far as he could, and landed in a heap about 2 feet away. That won't do at all, scolded Canby, helping him to his feet. You can never jump away from conclusions. Getting back is not so easy. That's why we're so terribly crowded here. That was certainly the truth, for all along the bleak shore and clustered on the rocks, for as far as anyone could see, were enormous crowds of people, all sadly looking out to sea. Isn't there even a boat? Asked Milo, anxious to get on with his trip. Oh, no, replied Canby, shaking his head. The only way back is to swim, and that's a very long and very hard way. I don't like to get wet, moaned the unhappy bug, and he shuddered at the thought. Neither do they, said Canby sadly. That's what keeps them here. But I wouldn't worry too much about it, for you can swim all day in the sea of knowledge and still come out completely dry. Most people do. But you must excuse me now. I have to greet the new arrivals. As you know, I'm as friendly as can be. Over the humbug's strenuous objections, Milo and Talk decided to swim, and protesting loudly, the bug was dragged along with them towards the sea. Canby hurried off to answer more questions, and the last thing he was heard to say was, Pardon me, can you tell me who I am? They swam and swam and swam for what seemed like hours, and only Talk's firm encouragement kept Milo struggling through the icy water. At last they reached the shore, thoroughly exhausted, and except for the bug, completely soaked. That wasn't bad at all, said the humbug, straightening his tie and brushing it off. I must visit there again. I'm sure you will, gasped Milo. But from now on, I'm going to have a very good reason before I make up my mind about anything. You can lose too much time jumping to conclusions. The car was just where they'd left it, and in a moment they were on their way again as the road turned away from the sea and began its long climb into the mountains. The warm sun and billowy breezes dried them as they went. I hope we reach Digitopolis soon, said Milo, thinking of the breakfast they hadn't eaten. I wonder how far it is. So the next chapter is gonna be, we're gonna end it here. Next time we're gonna read chapter 14, which is called The Dodecadron Leads the Way. We're getting to the end. We have like maybe 5 more chapters. This is 6 more chapters. It only goes to like here, and then the rest of it is there's pages at the end that are like what do you call them? Celebrations of the Phantom Tollbooth from, it's like people who have read it who give like their opinion on it and stuff. I was a junior in high school when the Phantom Tollbooth made its literary debut, so it isn't in my childhood reading journal. As a child, I could easily become lost in a book or in creative play, but like Milo, I was often bored in school. I saw absolutely no use for homework. So it's like people who are people who have read it and like they give their opinions on the book because it's the 50th anniversary version, so I have like annotations and stuff in there at the end. So the actual book only goes to like here-ish, so there's not actually that much left to it. So next time, in the next couple days, they're not that awake. They're just making little noises. They're covered. I covered them up before I started reading. But yeah, next time we will read in the next couple days, either tomorrow or the next day, we'll probably finish it. So I hope you guys have been enjoying the story. Like I said, it's my favorite book. No nose is good nose. It's gonna be my new it's my new slogan. Let's see. Hi, what you guys doing? You guys are supposed to be asleep. They're in their coconut over there. Twilight's in the coconut. Blue and Halo are awake. Why are you guys awake? Why are you guys awake? You guys are supposed to be sleeping. I can say goodnight, honey, but we're both gonna go to bed, okay? A very quick goodnight. Good night. Good night, birdies. Yeah, I don't know why they're good night. Good night, Frightful. Oh, Stratty did come to sit with me. So there's Looney. It's a good night from Looney. I hope you guys are all enjoying the story. We've been doing like almost 2 hours a night, so. Hey. Sweet. Yeah. He did eat earlier, so I don't know why he's so hungry. I put Lucky and Looney both in the crate so that he could have his food and not get it stolen. That's why Looney was in timeout, because she kept trying to get the cat food. So when Looney was in timeout, I gave Stratus more food. There you go. Sweet boy. FV, hi FV947. Thank you for coming in. Please like and subscribe. This past week we've been doing some story times, reading my favorite book, The Phantom Tollbooth. But generally we do animal content here. So these little animal guys are usually in my streams. We do streams with the animals. We do cooking, domestic stuff. We go on adventures in the summertime outside. So that's the kind of stuff we do here. If any of that sounds like it would interest you, please feel free to like and subscribe. I'm about to go to sleep soon, though. How old is your cat? What's my favorite parody song I sing to your cat? My cat is 10. This guy right here is 10, and then I have a kitten. Is he still in the crate? Are you still in there? I opened it. You can come out. What are you still doing there, buddy? What are you still doing in there? So we have two cats. That's Stratus. He's 10. Free the kitten. Yeah. What are you doing in there? It was open. It wasn't locked. He was just sitting in there. Hi. So he'll be 11 next month, actually. And then this is Lucky. He's only 1. He turned 1 a few months ago. Yes, little baby Lucky. Baby Lucky. Baby Lucky. Baby Lucky. Hi. Ah, don't scratch the couch, little baby. A parody song that I sing to the cat. I don't know. I don't really sing to the cat that much. I sing to the dog. I sing, what's the one I sing to the dog? I go, there's a song I sing to the dog, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. We have a husky. Right here. She's right here, my husky. Looney the husky. Hi. And this is the doggy. Miss Looney. Looney's a husky. Pala Siberian sled dog husky. She's a Sapala Siberian sled dog. Huh. Are you into the sled dog? Hi, McKenna. Welcome in. Sweet girl. I keep forgetting to cut this zip tie off. I almost left it there on purpose for a little while because Lucky was having so much fun playing with it. When Looney and Lucky are sitting together, Lucky starts tapping it. Let's cut it off though. It's sticking out all over the place. How many pets do I have? That's a good question. We have like 15, but some of them are like farm animals, kind of not pets. I don't know if I'd consider the guinea hens like pets. They're kind of like farm animals. Not counting the guinea hens, it's like 9. Then we have 6 guinea hens. Without the guinea hens, it's 9. We have a dog, my doggy. Hi Looney. Dog, 2 cats. There's 4 lovebirds here. They're in here. What are you guys doing? Dog, 2 cats, 4 lovebirds. These guys over here. Hi. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 2 goats. Hi. Right, dog, 2 cats. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, 2 goats. That's 9. You want an animal sanctuary or farm? Yeah, that's kind of essentially what we got is a farm. We got 2 goats and 6 guinea hens. They're mostly outside. We have 1 guinea hen that lives inside because she's disabled, but the other ones live outside. I've always had animals my whole life. We've been doing like farmy stuff since I was like 18 or so. Did we have, we got started getting chickens when I was like 17, 18. We had 20 chickens at one point. You can tell people whatever you want, hon. Hi. All right, go to sleep, birdies. Yeah, I don't know what you guys are tweeting about. But yeah, it's getting late, so I was about to get ready to head to bed. I was just saying goodnight to all the animals. Birdies, don't be jealous. Hi. It's time for you guys to go to bed. It's time for you guys to go to bed. Cover you up. Gotta sleep. Shut the light over here. This is probably what's keeping them up because they can see the lights going through the side of their cage. I tried to cover them up so they would go to sleep, but then the light is on the side there. How are the cats with the birds? They're pretty much fine. They don't really... Occasionally they'll watch, just like sit on this... They'll sit on my little rollator over here and watch the birds, but they don't really like attack them or anything. They sometimes sit and watch, but they're pretty good. I'm very careful whenever I let the birds out. The birds do come out. I let them fly around the room and stuff. But whenever I do that, I obviously make sure the cats are in the other room. They either get locked in my mom's bedroom over there, or they go right in the crate. Usually the kitten. Stratos will go over on my mom's side. He's an older cat. He's been raised around the birds and he doesn't care. The kitten I worry about a little more because he's a crazy kitten. So the kitten will go, the dog goes in the crate, and the kitten goes in the crate with the dog. They hang out together in the crate when I let the birds out to fly, because the birds will fly. They have their little perch up there. They have their little perch up here. So they fly around the room and have fun come out when they come out. So that's the only time that I would worry about the cats, because otherwise they're in a cage, so the cats can't really get to them, but they don't like make any moves to try to get into the cage, which is good. Lucky, sometimes the kitten jumps on top of the cage, but he more tries to just go and want somewhere to go look out the window. So he'll jump up on the cage and then go sit in the window. But that's the only thing he does that probably annoys the birds, and it's probably just annoys them from him jumping on them. Like, I can't imagine that's fun. The cage will like shake when he jumps up there. Effie says, nice, pretty sweet setup. Yeah, and they have like a nice big cage here. It's huge. It's like as big as this cage is as big as like a full-size dog crate. Like, this cage here is pretty much the same size as this extra large dog crate. So about the same size. It's 42. It's like 42 tall by 30 like long by 20 wide. It's a pretty big cage. Birdies, pretties. Hi. Hi. All right, go to sleep, guys. But it's getting late for them too. They should be going to sleep. You guys go to sleep. Yeah. Kitty cat. You want to know if I can tell everybody that I'm your favorite adult? She wants to shout it to the rooftops. Yeah, these are my good kitties. Stratus is going to be 11 next month in March, late March. He was born in 2015, so hi, kitties. Nice guys. And the baby Lucky. Baby Lucky. Baby Lucky. Baby Lucky, baby Lucky. Come on. So yeah, I don't know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. Hopefully we have time to do some play with Looney. Like I said, I'm going to be, and maybe later, like I said, we'll do maybe a play session with Looney, and then later on we'll do our reading again. I'm going to have Phoenix the puppy sitting twice this week. I think it's this week, right? Yes, it's coming week. It's the 11th. I have to look. I think I have PT again, like on the 13th, I think is the day. And then the 11th and the 14th is, so it's the day after tomorrow. And then the weekend, Saturday. So, which is actually Valentine's Day, but yeah. So the 11th and the 14th, I'm going to be puppy sitting for Phoenix the puppy. It got canceled last time, so like he said, he wanted me to reschedule, so we're going to be doing it twice this week. Because we rescheduled from last week, and then I'm taking an extra day too. Where's my phone case? I had to take my phone case off to fit it on the other little tripod, but I don't know where the rest of the phone case went. Huh, gotta find it. But yeah, so we'll probably hang out with Mr. Phoenix puppy this week. That's always fun to watch the puppies play and stuff. Lucky. So that's what we'll be doing this week is reading and puppy play. Hi, Lucky. So I hope everybody comes back to join me this week. Might also do another workout session now that my leg's all healed up. It took a few days. Took a few days for this leg to heal up because oh my god, I definitely overdid it with that band I had was way too tight. So I went to my brother's house today and I got the rest of my workout bands But these ones I can actually adjust because I can tie them like where I want them. There's a couple that are already tied, and then I have a couple that I can tie exactly where I want to if I need to. So all my workout bands now. So I'll be able to do another workout now that I'm all healed up. It took like, what, 3 or 4 days for that to go down. My leg was like hard as a rock. I had put heating pad upon heating pad upon heating pad, and I was doing like self-massage, like rubbing into it. It was bad. It was like so painful. Trying to like just like squat to go to the bathroom, like to get on the toilet is like you gotta go like this, and trying to like squat down with your right here in your hamstring. Oh, like not your hamstring, your quad. It was like, oh, it was like dying. So that was fun. I think I have a little bit of food here I have to heat up because I was trying to get online before it got too late, but everyone fell asleep. Now I'm falling asleep, so I had a little more food I didn't finish. So let's finish my food while I'm at it. It's just a couple more bites. But yeah, so we will hopefully see you guys tomorrow. If not, it'll be the next day, but in the next couple days we'll have Phoenix and story time. So everybody have a wonderful evening. Thank you guys for coming by. I do hope you enjoyed the story. Thank you for letting me read it all to you, because it gives me a chance to read it as well, because I've been wanting to reread that book for a while. Like I said, it's my favorite book. I think the last time I reread it was, I've like read that book since 5th grade. Like I read it in 5th grade, I read it in 7th grade. It was like my go-to book that I would always go back to and like reread books when I would reread the same book over and over again a lot when I was little. But as I got older, you just don't have as much time to do that. So the last time I reread it, I think was, I read it to my little brother when he was young. So he's like 21 now, but I read it to him when he was like 10. So like I said, it's been like a decade since I've read it, at least 10 years, because he's in his 20s now. And I read it to him when he was little. So that's, I believe the last time I read it was when reading it to him when he was a little kid. And he liked to when I would do the voices and stuff. So that's where I got into doing the voices. Kamala lost. Was she running? Were they doing the midterms? What was she running for in the midterms? They're not really doing presidency stuff yet. I mean, we know she lost before. We know she lost to Trump. That was a while ago. Anyway, yeah, I'm about to hop offline, so thank you all for coming, and yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Please like and subscribe if you like what you see here. Bye.